Many historic sites have been kept over the years, such as the Tower of London and George Washington's Mount Vernon, but it is frequently unexpected to discover some of the history-related venues preserved for visitors to view. These sites, whether associated with a horrible crime or an unusual event, can be popular tourist destinations. These 5 locations are among the most unusual historic sites to be maintained. The Witch House. The Salem Witch Trials, in which many people were executed, were a frightening and tragic period in colonial American history. Hundreds of years later, however, the stories of these people being accused of witchcraft continue to pique people's interest. The Witch House in Salem, Massachusetts, is said to be the sole surviving structure directly associated to the historic Salem Witch Trials of 1692. It is also open to the public. The big, ominous-looking gray clapboard mansion with lattice windows, formerly known as the Corwin Mansion, was the home of Judge Jonathan Corwin, 1640 to 1718, one of 2 judges conducting investigations of supposed witches at the period. Corwin, a fervent witch hunter who was investigated for utilizing ghostly evidence to support convictions, was also personally involved in the witch problem. Corwin's mother-in-law was accused of witchcraft but never arrested, and one of his children was believed to have been affected during the witchcraft plague. During the 1940s, locals donated funds to move a 35-foot, 10.6-meter structure that was about to be raised to enlarge a road. It opened as a museum in 1948, providing an insightful look at the daily lives of the rich class in 17th-century New England. Bodhi, California. The once thriving gold mining town of Bodhi, California, in the Sierra Nevada mountains, is now considered a ghost town, yet it comes alive during tourist season. Bodhi, which saw a gold rush in 1875 but was nearly abandoned by the 1940s, was designated a state historic park and a national historic landmark in 1962. As a result, Bodhi remains in a condition of arrested decay. One of the most intriguing aspects of this ghost town is how many personal goods were left behind, owing to the high cost of having people's possessions removed when they relocated due to the remote location. Finding ancient furniture inside abandoned buildings and other vestiges of daily life, such as a roulette wheel inside the bar, makes Bodhi appear trapped in time, giving it a more eerie and surreal feel than a regular ghost town. Franklin Castle. For all of its colorful and respected history, the Tiedemann House, also known as Franklin Castle on Franklin Avenue in Cleveland, may be best known as a haunted house. The massive stone Victorian eclectic edifice was constructed in the early 1880s by rich local businessman Hannes Tiedemann, who had moved from Germany. Tiedemann not only lived in the house with his family, but he also provided temporary housing for friends, family, and freshly arrived German immigrants. It was then home to the German-American League of Culture and has since been owned by a number of different people, including Judy Garland's 5th husband, musician Mickey Deans, who made significant investments in repairing the property. A fire caused by an arsonist shortly after Deans sold it in 1999 necessitated more renovation. Following years of rumors, one owner in the mid-1970s capitalized on the public's interest by organizing haunted house tours. The tragedy that the Tiedemann family experienced while residing on this land contributed to the spread of ghost mythology. 4 of the Tiedemann children apparently died in a house that once stood on the same site as Franklin Castle. The present owners began renting out rooms to overnight guests in this stately but sinister-looking home, which, according to Cleveland.com, was formerly dubbed the city's most haunted house. Minuteman Missile National Historic Site, near Wall, South Dakota. Visitors to the Minuteman Missile National Historic Site can see what life was like at a site that played an essential purpose during the Cold War. During these years, when over 1,000 Minuteman missiles were buried around the United States, crews would sit in launch command centers like this, monitoring classified frequencies and ready to attack the enemy at any moment. The tiny and relatively commonplace surroundings of the launch center is in sharp contrast to the terrifying cause for its existence. This site has been impressively kept since it was decommissioned in the mid-1990s. In addition to all of the complex equipment, the center is nostalgic, with a vintage coffee pot still sitting in the snack area and reading materials such as Byte magazine and very old copies of Reader's Digest, which were once used to help cope with what must have been monotonous hours in this impenetrable bunker 80 feet, 24 meters, underground. Stavros Nyarkos Foundation Parkway in Baltimore. The previously great and ornate Baltimore movie theater, known as the Stavros Nyarkos Foundation Parkway, built in 1915, appears shabby or incomplete to many spectators today. Despite the $19 million spent on preservation, it is designed to look exactly as it did when abandoned in 1978. This is due to efforts to keep this Renaissance revival-style movie palace in a state of controlled ruin. Some remains of the venue's past, such as the numerous wallpaper sections depicting different decades, provide insight into the theater's evolution over time. Many years after the city seized custody of the building, architect Steve Zeiger met with his friend Jed Dietz, the director of the Maryland Film Festival. They came up with the notion of bringing the building up to code, while primarily keeping it as is so that the visible improvements the venue had undergone could tell their own tale. George Arendt, senior project manager at Southway Builders, was astonished by the plan. I said, "Wait, they just want to leave it as is?" Chipped plaster, fading and uneven paint, missing ornaments, and a ruined sunburst medallion all indicate a decline. While Steve Zeiger attempted to avoid recreating elements that no longer existed, a new marquee was constructed to replace the old one that was demolished in 1980. So, while the outcome may be a unique setting for cinema screenings, attendees may also take a trip through history by visiting this iconic theater, which reopened in 2017.